Welcome back to the Piping Pastor. Well, we're getting back into our Poetry in the Bible series today by taking a look at Andrew Marvell. Well, I am rather happily today smoking some Northwoods by Boswell. I have been out for a while and had the occasion to go up there this afternoon. Happily, Boswell is only an hour away from me, and so I got to go in person rather than just placing the order online. Because I needed some pipe repair work done, and I thought, you know what? Here in a few weeks, we're going to be moving across the country, and I won't be able just to drive up to Boswell's anymore, so I will make the trip. This is one of my Admiral pipes. This is the little tomato. I've shown you this one here before. But my other Admiral pipe, the one that's more like a square pot, some of you that went to Muletown got to see that one. I brought that one to Muletown with me. I broke the stem, so I had to get a replacement done for it. And these pipes are so old, finding a stem that would fit right online was just going to be too much of a chore. So I went up to Boswell's today and brought them the pipe, and they're going to do a stem for me for $40. And you can't beat that, just for a regular straight stem, and it's going to fit, it's going to be flush, it's going to be all correct. And they get it done like a week to 10 days. So, which gives me another excuse to go to Boswell's again next week. So I might be up there again next Saturday, maybe Friday or Saturday. We'll see. While I was there, I got a pound of Northwoods, and I was talking to the chap there behind the desk who was helping me out with the pipe repair. And I was like, I want to give something else a try too. I'm not a real big aromatic guy. And for those of you who have been to Boswell or know Boswell's tobaccos, a great many of them are aromatics, but they have a lot of other blends. I said, well, Northwood's my favorite. I've loved that one for a while. And I've tried a couple of other ones, and they're all right, but nothing really tickled my fancy. So he suggested I try railroad car. Yeah. And as they'll do up there, they'll let you fill your bowl and give it a go before you purchase it. So I filled a bowl and went upstairs and had a pipe and a reed for a little while, and it turned out to be pretty good. So I got a couple ounces of that as well. But it's nice to get back to my Northwoods. Obviously not my favorite. You all know what my favorite is, but of the Boswell blends, I like it very, very much. I will say though that this go around, doesn't seem to have as much oomph as it was the last time. Maybe that's just me, and maybe it's just because I got done just smoking another bowl of the other stuff. Still good though, and I got plenty of it, so I won't have to order any online to go across the country. Well, as I mentioned, I was having a pipe and a reed, and I was reading Andrew Marvell. So I have a couple of volumes of his collection of poetry and prose. Andrew Marvell is a 17th century metaphysical poet. And I mentioned this before, that's my favorite, I guess you would say, genre of poets. Ironically enough, metaphysical poet was a coined term to kind of make fun of the poets of that era who were, also theologians and pastors and who wrote about sacred and divine things within their poetry. And it was later adopted as just the term for them, but initially it was a pejorative. It's funny how often pejorative terms end up becoming adopted by those they're intended to make fun of. Of course, the earliest example would be Christians, right? We were called Christians because it means little Christ. Oh, those little Christ followers. Within the Big Bang Theory, obviously, another one was like, the universe didn't begin some sort of big bang, And as it turns out, yeah, T equals 0 was the expansion of the universe into 4 physical forces, and yeah, probably not a sound, but that's what it came to be known as. It was a Catholic priest who came up with that too. Father Brian, there you go, nod to the Vatican Observatory. And honestly, when it comes to science and religion, the Vatican Observatory has done a great deal of in-depth research. Some really top-notch scientific scholars that have come out of that. I've met several Jesuit and Dominican friars who were accomplished scientists. But that's a talk for another day. So I'm reading Marvel, and I come across a few of these stanzas in one of his poems. Now, this is a really interesting poem in itself, and it's a rather lengthy one, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But this poem is a dialogue between pleasure and the soul. Essentially, if you could think of this as a poetic representation of the conversation that Christ has in the desert while Christ is being tempted by the devil. You know, Christ is there, and the devil's like, oh, you can have this, and you can have that. And Christ is answering the devil with Scripture, right? And fighting back with the Word of God, kind of demonstrating to us how we are meant to deal with temptation and sin. This is kind of Marvel's take on this. On this, he notes that it's pleasure, it's sensuality, kind of tempting him, and him answering. His soul is answering back. So the soul is being inspired of God. And there's a couple of lines here that I think were really rather appropriate to some recent conversations that have been happening, and some other videos that kind of fit with this. So it starts here with pleasure. Wilt thou all the glory have that war or peace commend? Half the world shall be thy slave, the other half thy friend. So pleasure is saying, look at this, all the great stuff that war and peace can both give, I'll give it all to you. Half the world will be servants to you, and half of them will love you. You'll control everything. People will either fear you or love you. Look at all this power you can have, right? And this is how soul answers. What friends, if to myself untrue? What slaves, unless I captive you? Now, what that put me in mind of, first of all, that first line, what friends if to myself untrue? So what does it matter if half the world loves me if I'm not true to myself? If I step away from who I am as a person to gain these friends, what do they matter? What does it matter if I have 1 million people that follow me? And the reason that stuck to me is because, the whole conversation we got going back and forth and all the YTPC drama type stuff, religion and politics or not, and pipes, blah, 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 whatever. People responding to that and point the fact, I'll point out Greg Tunneltake. He's like, if you don't like the channel, don't watch it. And Ethan just recently said this as well. And Smarty Bob has said this, and several others have been, if you don't like it, change the channel, right? They're being true to themselves. You could probably get a lot of followers. No, it was Uncle Willie. It was a Smarty Bob. I was thinking it was Uncle Willie. Sorry, I'm not just mixing you guys up. But you could gain a lot more followers if you were just the populist, right? If you just said everything that was popular or mainstream or what people wanted to hear, and and things like that, you could gain a lot more quote unquote friends. But would that really matter? At the end of the day, because they wouldn't be real friends. They'd be friends of a person who you are not. You're far better off being who you are, no matter what that is. Greg and I don't agree on everything. We have a lot of differences about a lot of stuff, right? Not the least of which is the fact that he likes to smoke desserts. I'm kidding, Greg. Kind of. No, but apart from that, I know who he is because he's a true and genuine person, right? Even though I've never met the guy in person, commenting back and forth, chatting back and forth in comments and watching to his videos. But I know enough of him to always, he's straightforward. He is who he says he is, right? And so it's up to me whether I'm like, okay, you know what? I want this person in my circle of friends. I want this person to be an associate of mine, or I don't. But if I don't, then I'm not. Then that's fine. But if I do, I want to be friends with the real person, right? And on the other side of that conversation, a large part, Ed the Armchair Piper, he and I don't agree on a lot of things, but he seems like a great chap. So again, but if you don't like what the things they say, the person that they are, you're not going to be friends with them because you'd be friends with someone who wasn't really them. And that would be incredibly onerous to try to pretend to be something you're not in order to gain friends, right? And like Marvel says in his poem, what does that even really matter? And the second thing, what slaves unless I captive you? You realize, this whole thing about the whole world will be at your feet. Well, we're all a slave to something. And this has come up most recently in the Screwtape Letters, the presentation that Father Brian and Parsimonius are doing. In the last video where Wormwood was talking to Screwtape and saying, we prepare them for the table and he prepares them to be sons, right? You're one camp or the other because you're always beholden to something, whether it's money, fame, anything in the divine realms of any. You're beholden to something or someone somewhere, right? And what he's saying here is like, even if I had the whole world at my feet, I would still be captive to you. Which is the same temptation that Satan offered to Christ. You can have the entire world at your feet if you'll just bow to me. Just bow to me, just the one person, and then you can have everything. Because at the end of the day, nobody is truly and fully independent. There's always something you're beholden to, someone you're beholden to, some set of ideals you're beholden to. You need to be aware of what those are, of who that is. Because right here, pleasure is intimating that there is no master. You'll have mastery, but there will be no master. And soul's like, no, that's not how this works. There will be someone. I'll be beholden to someone, and that's going to be you. You're just trying to be sneaky about it. So know who you are, be who you are, know what you're beholden to, know who you're beholden to, know why you're beholden to them, and whether it's a choice or whether it's just a situation you find yourself in. Both of which take a little bit of self-examination. Happily, we all have these. And if nothing else, taking an hour out with this provides some time for some introspection. Well, that's it for this time. So I'm going to turn my attention back to my Northwoods here, and I hope you have a lovely week. Always, happy reading.